The axe shrieked as it arced downward, catching the light and glinting brightly, thirsting for blood. Its wielder laughed in a manic harmony, opening his black tattooed jaw almost impossibly wide in the scream that had given him his name. Long black hair whipped behind him as he moved, red eyes glowing, slashing at the imaginary foe again and again, honing his moves so that in a real battle, his enemy would be so much raw meat. Raw meat. Grom Hellscream grunted and whirled and turned, sheer power tempered by skill, until the sound of his name being called pulled him from the red haze that descended at such times, even in a mere exercise such as this. Grom Hellscream lowered Gorehowl, panting only slightly from the vigorous exertion, and glanced up to see an older but imposing figure stomping toward him. Kargath, he replied, waiting until the shattered hand chieftain had reached him. They clasped hands, right hands. Kargath's left hand had been severed long ago and replaced with a wicked-looking Sith blade. Well met. Well met to many, it seems, the older chieftain said, nodding to where more orcs were gathering. Ner'zhul sent emissaries to every clan, or so I was told. Grom nodded, his black tattooed jaw setting into a grim line. Some of those emissaries had been his, sent at the old shaman's request. He is planning something. Grom shouldered the massive axe, and together the two leaders turned and walked across the valley, toward the ruins of the dark portal, passing warriors from both clans. Glares and sharp words were flying here and there, but at least no one was fighting, yet. But what? It doesn't matter, Kargath replied. Anything is better than this. He ran his fingers absently along the Sith's edge. These past 2 years, we've sat and done nothing. Nothing, and why? Because the Alliance defeated us? So what? Because the portal was destroyed? Surely they can craft another. There has to be someone we can fight, else we sit and molder like so much rotten meat. Grim nodded. Kargath was a creature of combat, pure and simple. He lived to fight and to kill. Grom could appreciate that, and what Kargath said had merit. They were a combative race, the orcs. In constant struggle honed their wits and strengthened their limbs. Without that, they grew soft. He had kept his own people sharp by warring against other clans, and he suspected Kargath had done the same, though their two clans had not skirmished. Still, one could attack patrols and scouting parties only so often before it led to true war, and warring against one's own kind did not interest him. When Ner'zhul had formed the Horde, he had united the clans into a single massive unit, and even after all this time, Grom still thought of them that way. When his war-song warriors fought the Thunderlords, or the Red Walkers, or the Blade Winds, they were battling their fellow warriors, orcs they should have been fighting alongside instead of against. During combat, he still felt the same bloodlust, the same savage joy as Gorehowl tore a shrieking path through his foes, but afterward he felt empty, hollow, and slightly unclean. What had happened? He wondered as they approached the ruins and the figure standing before them. Where had the Horde gone wrong? They had outnumbered the blades of grass that had once covered the plains, and the drops of water comprising the ocean. When they marched, the thunder of their footsteps shattered mountains. How could such an army fail? It was Gul'dan's fault. Grom was sure of it. The lifeless plains that had once been covered in grain and grass, the trees that had withered and blackened, the skies that had grown dark and red as blood. All that had been caused by the warlocks in their quest for more powers never meant for orcish hands. But it was more than that. They had doomed Draenor, all of them. But Gul'dan had been behind the warlocks' every move, and it was his fault that the Horde had failed to conquer the other world and claim it as their own. After all, the wily warlock had convinced Grom to stay behind on Draenor during the first battle, instead of taking his rightful place at the vanguard. "We need you here," Gul'dan had claimed. "You and your Warsong clan are some of our finest, and we need to hold you in reserve, just in case. We also need someone to stay here on Draenor and protect our interests. Someone powerful, someone we can trust. Someone like you." Grom had been a fool, letting the Warlock's flattery lure him from his path. He had watched as Blackhand and Orgrim Doomhammer led the Horde through the portal into that strange place called Azeroth. And he had watched as reports came back, reports of their initial successes and then of their ultimate failures. Grom growled softly under his breath. If only he had been there, he could have turned that final battle around, he was sure of it. With his help, Doomhammer could have conquered that human city by the lake and still sent forces to crush the traitorous Gul'dan and his cohorts. Then they could have claimed Lordaeron and spread out from there, sweeping across the land until no one was left to stand against them. Grom shook his head. The past was the past. Blackhand was dead. His old friend Durotan was dead. Doomhammer was captured. The dark portal was destroyed. Gul'dan was gone, and the Horde was a shadow of its former glory. But perhaps some of that was about to change. He and Kargath had reached the portal now, and he could see the waiting figure clearly. Ner'zhul's hair was completely gray now, but otherwise the Shadow Moon chieftain and former Horde leader looked as powerful as ever. Then he turned in Grom's direction. The Warsong clan leader growled and jerked in surprise as he got his first good look at the shaman's face. White paint adorned Ner'zhul's cheeks, upper lip, nose, brow, and forehead, turning them white as bone. And that was clearly the intent, Grom realized. The old shaman had masked his face to resemble a skull. "Grom Hellscream and Kargath Bladefist," Ner'zhul called out, his voice still strong and clear. "Welcome." "Why have you summoned us?" Kargath said bluntly, wasting no words. "I have news," the shaman answered. "News and a plan." Grom snorted. "For 2 long years you have hidden away from us. How can you have news?" he said, anger and doubt in his voice. He gestured at Ner'zhul's painted face. "You let Gul'dan supplant you. You refuse to drink from the chalice, and you sulk like a marmot in its burrow. Now you announce you have a plan, and emerge from your seclusion wearing the face of the dead. I do not think I want to hear what sort of plan that involves." He could hear the pain in his own voice. Despite all that had happened with Gul'dan, despite his distrust of advisors and shaman, and warlocks alike these past few years, he wanted Ner'zhul to still be the shaman Grom remembered from his youth. Ner'zhul touched the white skull on his face and sighed deeply. "Long have I dreamed of death. I have seen him, spoken with him. I have seen the death of my people, the death of all I have loved. And this image I wear to honor that. I did not wish to come forth, but now believe that I owe it to my people to lead them once more." "Lead as you did before," Kargath cried. "Lead us to betrayal, to defeat. I will send you to that death which you are so enamored of with this very hand if you attempt to so lead us, Ner'zhul." He brandished his Sith hand at the shaman. Ner'zhul began to reply, but stopped as he spotted something behind them. Turning, Grom saw a hulking figure approaching, an ogre, judging by the way it towered over the orcs it passed. "What news, Dentarg?" Ner'zhul called out as his assistant crossed the clearing that separated the portal ruins from the orcs milling about. "I sent you to locate the other clans and summon them here, as I told you to do as well," he reminded Grom and Kargath. "Yet I see only Shadow Moon, Warsong, and Shattered Hand in this valley. Where are the rest?" "Lightning's Blade said they would attend," Grom assured him. "They have a long way to travel, so it may take them another day or 2. He shook his head. Neither Thunderlord nor Laughing Skull listened, however. He growled. They were too busy slaughtering each other. "This is precisely why we need to act," Ner'zhul cried. "We are killing ourselves and each other as we sit and do nothing." He bared his teeth in a grimace. "All the work we did, All that I did to forge the horde is crumbling away, the clans splintering off and fighting with one another. If we do not act soon, we will be reduced to the old ways once more, with the clans meeting only in battle, save the yearly gatherings, if that. What did you expect to happen while you hid away for 2 years? Grom snapped. We understand that you were wounded by the explosion, but then, even after your wounds had healed, you never came out. Long we waited for your counsel, but it never came. Of course we went our own ways. Of course we began fighting with one another. You abandoned us so you could dream your dreams of death, Ner'zhul. And this is the result. I know, Ner'zhul said softly in pain. Grom's further angry words died on his lips in the face of that grief and shame. The Bladewind clan will join us, Kargath continued, breaking the uncomfortable silence. But Red Walker refused. They said the horde is nothing but a memory now, and each clan must look out for itself instead, he snarled. I would have slaughtered their chieftain then and there if you had not ordered otherwise. You would have been killed in return, Ner'zhul pointed out, or you would have slaughtered the entire clan, making good your escape. I did not want to risk you or lose them when there was a chance they might be persuaded. He pursed his lips. We will deal with them soon, however, never fear. He glanced around. What of the others? His eyes narrowed. What of the bone chewers? That brought a snarl to Grom's lips. I sent emissaries to Hyrkin's skull splinter, he said curtly. He sent back assorted limbs. They would be a great asset in battle, Kargath mused, idly stroking his scythe. The bone chewers are a powerful force on the field. Then he shook his head. They have grown even wilder since the portal fell, however. They cannot be controlled or trusted. Ner'zhul nodded. What of the White Claw clan? He asked Dentarg. The ogre frowned. Dead, most of them, he replied. Mostly wiped out by other clans before the truth about Gul'dan and his warlocks came to light. Even after Durotan's exile and death, the White Claws never hid their sympathy for the Frostwolves, and it made them a target. Those who survived are scattered, he shook his head. In truth, it is a clan no more. Ner'zhul felt a shiver of guilt at the mention of Durotan. He had warned the now dead leader of the Frostwolves once, seeking to undo some of the damage he had done, but in the end it had been to no use. Gul'dan's Shadow Council had found Durotan and slain one of the noblest orcs Ner'zhul had ever known. But regret and self-pity would not serve. He focused again on Dentarg's words and let himself grow angry. The White Claw clan was one of our oldest and proudest. Now they are little more than clanless savages? Is this what our race has fallen to? No more. We must rebuild the horde and renew the bond between all orcs. Only as a united race can we have any hope of survival, of honor, and of glory. Dentarg dropped to his knees. You know I live to serve you, master, he said simply. Grom gazed at the elderly orc, his brow knitting. Tell us this plan of yours, Ner'zhul, he stated, making sure his words carried to the orcs beyond the clearing. Tell us, and if it is sound, we shall follow you. Kargath inclined his head. I cast my word with hell screams, he said. Ner'zhul regarded the three of them solemnly for a moment, then nodded. We will wait until the Lightning's Blade and Bladewind clans arrive, Ner'zhul said. Then we will go to the others again, the Thunderlord and the Laughing Skull and the Red Walker and even the Bone Chewer clans. Our people must be united. What if they refuse still? Kargath growled. Then we will persuade them, Ner'zhul replied, his grim tone leaving no doubt as to its meaning. Kargath roared his approval, raising his scythe so high it caught the light. Ner'zhul turned to Grom. And you, Grom, he said softly, we will wait for the other clans. I will tell you my plan and set you to a task. Grom's red eyes glittered. Tell me what you would have me do and why. Ner'zhul smiled, the death mask on his face making it a rictus. There is something I need you to find.